The Final Four is set. All 4 1 seeds, and it is Auburn. But Auburn surviving a scare right there. Janai Broome, National Player of the Year candidate. Hyperextended right elbow appeared to. Rolled left ankle. Goes to the locker room. X-rays are negative, fortunately, for Janai Broome. He missed 2 games in January because of a left ankle injury, some shoulder issues. He said coming off the floor, you could read his lips, said, "I'm done." Well, he was not done. He comes back in the game and knocks down a 3. His last 3 points of the game, finishes with 25 points, 14 rebounds, 25 points coming on 10 of 13. That's good for 77% from the floor. He's the first player with 25 and 10 and 75% from the floor in an elite game since Hakeem Olajuwon in 1984 when he was known as Akeem. Now he is Hakeem, and my name is Hakeem. And let's introduce the Cavalcade of Stars. This NCAA Tournament recap is presented by Belfour Property Restoration. Auburn 70-64 on to the Final Four. Matt Norlander, Gary Parrish, Tim Doyle. Tim, you had seen Janai Broome all tournament long. You said he didn't look right. He gets injured here, comes out of the game, then back into the game. What'd you think?
Yeah, that was a warrior performance. No other way to say it. I mean, the numbers don't lie, Gary. He struggled the first 2 games of the tournament, but he bounced back in a big way against Michigan. And then today he was just simply sensational, building his case for National Player of the Year. You know, think about this Michigan State squad. They got the football pads. They're physical. They're going to throw different bodies at you. He was efficient in this game. Hakeem, you mentioned he took 13 shots. He made 10. He was going to the glass. He set the tone. I think what goes underrated when you look at this Auburn team is his defense. Held Michigan to 65 points, 36% from the field. Michigan State, virtually the same exact numbers. Dominant performance, a game that really never got close.
He was terrific. 25 and 14 in a high-stakes game to take your school into the Final Four. I'll be completely honest with you. 24, 36, 48 hours ago, I was pretty sure I was going to submit my ballot for Cooper Flagg for National Player of the Year. At CBS Sports, we submit ballots tomorrow by noon. I still might. I haven't taken a close enough look at it, but what Janai Broome did in this one has at least got me to a place where I feel like I need to reconsider.
Wow.
Yeah, listen, I'm certainly leaning Broome as well. And I saw Cooper Flagg in person in Newark. He's been incredible. I wrote about this, 7, 8 weeks ago. This has been one of the best National Player of the Year races we've seen over the past 20, 30 years in the sport, and only fitting that both of these players are now going to get their teams into the Final Four, 4-1 seeds. It's incredible. On Auburn and what it did here, Broome, the guys just spoke to that. It was awesome. But for Auburn specifically, on Selection Sunday, when it had lost 3 of its Final Four going in, there's a note that 3 of the Final Four losses, no team's ever won a national championship. They regathered themselves. They got a test from Creighton. They got a test from Michigan. And then here against Michigan State, they get it done in convincing fashion. Super impressive by Bruce Pearl's team. They were the last one on the board, literally, and they got it done, and we got all 4 1s going to San Antonio.
You're going to hear this all week long, and it's awesome. We're going to repeat it all week long. All 4 1 seeds in the Final Four for just the 2nd time in NCAA tournament history. The only other time was in 2008. Where was that played? San Antonio. Where is this Final Four being played? San Antonio. All right, back out to Atlanta. Welcoming the legendary Bill Raftery. Bill, you saw Janai Broome go down, then he comes back in. What about the grit that he showed, the toughness in this game?
Yeah, obviously, it looked very serious, no question about it. I mean, it could have been an ankle, could have been a knee. Obviously, the shoulder and elbow, just magnificent effort. And then when he came back and made the 3, I think an emotional lift for this team. They're very unselfish. I think we forget how good they are defensively as well. Everybody knows they're switching, but they recover from a switch or a mismatch as well as anybody I've seen in recent memory. This is a solid basketball team on both ends of the floor with a tremendous leader. He does so many things patiently, never in a hurry, can post up. We saw him make that 3. He's just a solid quality leader.
With Broome on the bench, Auburn tied Michigan State 7 for 7 over the 5 minutes that he was off the floor. What does that say about this Tigers team?
Well, they're connected. They're confident. They're a little deeper than people understand. Johnson came in and gave him some great minutes when Broome went out. Solid in the low post area, can step out, make some shots. I think what really tells the story about this team is how together they are. They give the ball up. Anybody in a better spot, they make that opportunity, take advantage with the pass. So this is going to be a tough team next week. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, it's a rematch from earlier in the season. The Gators beat the top-ranked Tigers back in February. Auburn was ranked #1. They had a 14-game winning streak snapped. How might both teams be different at this point when you've got an all-SEC matchup? They know each other well. The two coaches know each other well, and Todd Golden and Bruce Pearl. Todd Golden, an assistant under Pearl for a couple of seasons there at Auburn.
You know, I assure you they're not going to change very much. I mean, maybe tweak a few things here on the defensive end in particular. But you know everything about one another. You know, it's all about executing, doing the right things, and playing together.
The legendary Bill Raftery here on CBS Sports HQ. Bill, safe travels out to San Antonio. Enjoy the Final Four.
Thank you very much.
The madness is here. Of course, don't miss a moment of the action on CBS. Download the March Madness Live app to watch every game. We only got 3 of them left. Anywhere, anytime, live. Coming up, much more reaction to Auburn marching on to the Final Four as they win in a virtual home game in Atlanta. They'll be celebrating into the night. They'll be cutting down nets there in Atlanta. Ultimately, looking to cut down nets in San Antonio. All 4 1 seeds on to the Final Four. Auburn, though, had to survive a scare. National Player of the Year candidate Janai Broome injured at the 10:30 mark in the second half. Ankle, elbow injury. Has to be helped off the floor, goes to the locker room. He missed 2 games in January because of a left ankle injury. You could see him when he was walking off the floor saying, "I'm done," but turns out he was not done. He comes back in the game, 5 minutes to play, and what does he do? Knocks down a 3. 25 points on 10 of 13, 14 rebounds, 77% from the floor. Janai Broome and Auburn moving on to the Final Four for just the second time in program history. Broome, first player with 25 points, 10 rebounds, and a field goal percentage of 75% in an Elite Eight game since Hakeem Olajuwon. And my name is Hakeem, and this man's name is Matt Norlander, Gary Parrish, Tim Doyle. Tim, you watched Janai Broome like we all did during this tournament, and you said there might be something off with him. He gets injured here, comes back in the game, and he shows his toughness. What'd you see?
Well, the first 2 rounds, he shot 40% from the field. He was only averaging 11 points versus 17 on the season. And I wondered if he was ever going to get it back. Get it back! Oh, he got it back in a big way. He was outstanding against Michigan. And then today, efficient, 13 shots, made 10 of them. He was 2 of 2 from 3. But he showed, Gary, that heart of a warrior. You want to be considered National Player of the Year? You say, "I'm done," then you go Willis Reed? It was awesome to see.
He was terrific, and he had been struggling, just like Auburn had been struggling recently. I believe it was in 3 of his previous 8 games before today. He was held in single digits in points. That is not how you become a part of the National Player of the Year conversation. So he needed to get going, and he obviously did, but that was a really scary moment with about 10 minutes to go. I'm not a doctor who can diagnose from, a studio in Connecticut, but I can read lips, and it didn't look good. It sounded like he thought he knew. It sounded like he believed he might not play basketball again at Auburn. And at that point, if you're Bruce Pearl, you're wondering, like, we are in the Elite Eight, we are up comfortably, and this could all slip away right now. And before you can even process all of that, he's already had x-rays done, they're negative, and he's back on the court. So all's well that ends well. They needed a big performance from him, not just to win this game, but to, I think, reestablish themselves as a serious threat to the other teams at the Final Four that have all been playing excellent basketball for a long time. Right now, if you were skeptical of Auburn coming into this tournament after what they did in these at least past 2 games, you got to feel a little bit better about it.
Janai Broome is one heck of a showman. If I can reference the Ion College Basketball podcast from December.
You can.
And my co-host over here. Janai Broome hurt his shoulder, and we thought that he was going to be out for like the rest of the season. He returned the next game. Yes. Okay, so in all seriousness, it's incredible that he did this, but he might be Wolverine. His ability to recover is unreal. And I think in the moment, a tight game, relatively speaking, all right, if I'm not available to be here with my guys, are we really at risk of losing this game? X-rays are negative. He comes back on the floor. And the fact that quickly he snatches a rebound with one arm, and then he hits the 3 when he comes back in. Huge moment. Auburn fans just taking over that arena, obviously, with Auburn being all of, an hour and a half away from a drive from the A. So it was super impressive. And Auburn in doing this, to me, impressive in this regard, too. Not just making the Final Four. And this is the second time Bruce Pearl has done this. When they did it in 2019, he was a 5 seed. It was the stumbles down the stretch. This is a different kind of team, but there were some echoes of when Florida in 07 would go on to win the national championship for a second straight year. Remember, it didn't look in tip-top form in those weeks leading up to the NCAA tournament. Lo and behold, Gators got done back-to-back. We'll see if Auburn can do that. It got pushed by Creighton. It got pushed by Michigan, and then Michigan State to a certain extent, but now we've got the big boys awaiting. And here is, we're going to have so many things to dive into, but this one is an incredible stat. I want to give a shout out to our sports research team. So KenPom goes back to 1996, 1997, and it evaluates teams on their efficiency and their efficiency margin. 4 of the 10 best teams from an efficiency margin standpoint since KenPom started are the 4 teams in this year's Final Four. This really, really, truly might be the most loaded Final Four from a talent and scoring perspective that we've ever had. Should be incredible.
Can't be true because I read on Twitter that college basketball was dead, no Cinderellas. I saw that on Twitter.
Well, you know what that is? It's get your NIL up. Get your NIL up,
Yeah.
right? That's what we've talked about that this entire tournament. And also, Tim, what I want to hit on here is the fact that Auburn matched Michigan State 7 for 7 over 5 minutes with Broome on the bench. It speaks to how deep this team. We had said this all season long, how deep, how good this team is. You got the freshman Tahad Pettiford off the bench getting double figures.
Well, at that time, that's when Auburn's defense really stepped it up, because when he went out of the game, they actually missed 6 of their next 7 shots, and they scored 2 points. But Auburn's defense was fantastic against Michigan. They held the Wolverines to 65 points, sub 40% from the field. And the numbers almost identical, guys, against Michigan State, 64 points, 34% from the field. So this is an Auburn team that I'm so impressed with their unselfishness. See that offensive possession there? I think like 4 different guys could have shot the ball. It ends up in Pettiford's hands. He bangs down a 3. I was worried about Auburn, and I was holding futures with them in February. And I was like, I'm going to dump these, because I wasn't sure how the roller coaster was going to be. We saw the bad Auburn last year against Yale, and then we saw them kind of stumble down the stretch. And then, Gary, I started thinking to myself, did they leave their best basketball in February? I was wrong.
I'm glad Matt brought up 2007 Florida, because I think there is some parallels there. That Florida team, and I covered them from start to finish, I think you win a national championship the year prior, you bring back all 5 starters, you're preseason #1. It's almost like the season doesn't even start till you get to the tournament. You can't accomplish what you're back in school to accomplish until you get into the bracket. So everything before that seems less important. And that's why, I mean, I watched Florida lose multiple times in person that year. Then, of course, the tournament starts, they turn it on, win the national championship. Similarly, the second Auburn slide started to happen was the second everybody understood they had just won the outright SEC title, had locked up a #1 seed, and had probably locked up the #1 overall seed. When you hear that from your coach and everybody who talks on TV about the sport, I think it's human nature to let your foot off the gas a little bit, to lose focus a little bit. And then suddenly, because you're in the SEC, you know, historically the greatest conference we've ever seen, you're playing top 20 KenPom teams, one after another. And if you're not sharp against those, even if you're the best team in the country, you can get caught. That is more or less what happened to them. But they have flipped a switch now. They've turned it back on, and they look, especially after today, much closer to the team we watched in January and February than the team we watched stumble into the NCAA tournament.
Bruce Pearl with another shot to win a national championship, got Auburn to the Final Four in 2019. Michigan State was also there. They lost as well. Auburn losing in the national championship, or losing in the semifinals to the eventual champion, Virginia. And you look now, what's next for Tom Izzo? 70 years young, I say, because he's still getting after it. 30 seasons at Michigan State. But the big thing that was their issue all season was three-point shooting. They were 319th in D1 in three-point field goal percentage. They went 7 for 23 in this game. It reared its ugly head, because that was what the fatal flaw was for Michigan State all season, Matt.
It did rear its head. I don't want to say this is why Michigan State lost, because Michigan State had shot this poorly from beyond the arc multiple times this season and managed to beat really, really good teams. Maybe not teams on the level of Auburn, but really close. So that was certainly a part of it. It was the bugaboo. We had been talking about I saw Michigan State in person back in Maui, and we were talking about it on the podcast. So this is not a surprise that it wound up going this way. But, man, in particular, there were about 3 or 4 shots in the final 3.5 minutes that Michigan State had that were good looks, that were clean looks. Ball just didn't fall into the hoop there. That's not the only reason why, but quite clearly it is a big reason. I will say this on Izzo. You know, he had a team capable of making the Final Four. They come 1 game away from it, and he's not going to retire. Let's just be clear about that. He spoke with that on the record with me this season and last season. He will be back, but knowing Tom, this is just, it's going to eat at him. Like, he can accept losing a game to a team that's really, really good, that Auburn is, but, you know, he had the clip that went viral, you know, a few days back before they got ready to go play in the Sweet 16. And I'm curious to see what Michigan State will be next season. I mean, Jace Richardson, see ya. Right? He's going to probably be a lottery pick. And so Michigan State is not a program that is regarded to have top 15, top 20 NIL. It's like top 10 in respect, but respect is not going to necessarily get you another top 2, top 3 seed, get you to an Elite 8. So I will be interested to see how Izzo and that staff, who they retain, who they can get, because there's no offspring of one of the freakiest athletes we've ever seen coming back in and being a lottery pick to that roster next season. It will be intriguing.
Tom Izzo's first loss to an SEC team in the NCAA Tournament. One of the all-time greats, a Hall of Fame coach with a heck of a season for the Michigan State Spartans. They come up short in the Elite Eight. As now we turn our attention to a rematch from earlier in the season. Florida beat Auburn in February. Auburn was #1 in the country. Florida was 6th in the country. Auburn had won 14 in a row, and Florida knocked them off. So, Matt, Gary, Tim, Gary, how might these teams be different?
Well, listen, these are two of the very best teams in the country. It was easier to recognize it with Auburn early than it was with Florida because Auburn was going out and doing things like winning at Houston, and Florida beat some good teams November, December, but didn't really have the big signature wins that thrust a team onto the national radar. But the efficiency numbers were always there. They were strong in the predictive metrics, and now here we are. Yes, they played in the regular season. Florida won that game. Florida won that game at Auburn. And even though Auburn is the #1 overall seed in this tournament and the outright SEC champ, the numbers are already out. Florida's a 2.5-point favorite in this game. So this is a heavyweight fight. I don't put much stock in what happened in the previous meeting, but these are two teams that, with Florida operating at an extremely high level for a pretty extended period of time. Auburn, not so much in that regard, but might have gotten it back today, taking a 15-point lead early on Michigan State. And then when the Spartans threw a punch and got it to 35-30 early in the second half, Auburn took it, countered with a 3 to get it back up to 8, then another bucket to get it back up to 10, and maintained that 10-point lead, double-digit lead, for much of the rest of the game, even though they only won it by 6. So Florida has been playing better, but I really think this game today could get Auburn back into that same space. And now we've got a really special one lined up for Saturday.
Looking forward to it'll be the first national semifinal. Players know each other. The coaches know each other very, very well. Todd Golden was an assistant for Bruce Pearl at Auburn for 2 seasons from 2014, 2016. Now clashing for a spot in the national championship. Coming up, much more ahead. Auburn cutting down nets in Atlanta. They really want to be cutting down nets in San Antonio. Janai Broome with a heck of a performance, gets injured, comes back into the game, and Auburn rolls to the Final Four. You're watching CBS Sports HQ. Back here on CBS Sports HQ, presented by Belfour Property Restoration. Time now for the Belfour Player of the Game. There's no surprise. I'm going to play spoilers. Janai Broome. Tim is Janai Broome. Who's 25 points, 10 of 13, 14 rebounds. He left the game with an injury, came back. He's a player of the game.
There's no other way to say it.
Right.
And, I mean, the cherry on top to the performance, because he already was great, Gary, was the one-arm stuff. Because he grabbed the rebound with one arm, and I was like, oh, does the other arm not work? And then the whole possession, I'm like, ooh, is he going to use the other arm? Is he going to shoot? Like, that was the anticipation that was building up. And then he shoots a three. He makes a three. They pan to his parents. They're going crazy. He's going crazy. The emotion of the crowd. It was an awesome performance. It was really something where you thought he was done. He wasn't done. He's out there at one arm. It was absolutely sensational.
Like, my mother was texting me about the game, and she was like, is he going to be okay? And I said, I don't know, but he doesn't look like he thinks he's going to be okay.
Does she have Auburn winning it all?
I believe she does. Yeah. She's very proud of her bracket.
That's good.
She's texted it to me like 11 times over the past 7 days. So you think this might be done. Now Auburn's game might slip away. This season could, it was like really bad stuff for a minute. Then he comes back in and just finishes what was already a terrific performance. 13 shots, makes 10 of them, 25 points, 14 rebounds. He has been special for the bulk of this season, had slipped a little bit lately, but reminded everybody in this one, before you hand Cooper Flagg the National Player of the Year trophy, at least take a fresh look at me.
He's a player of the game. There's no doubt about that. And yes, I thought this was all too fitting for Broome to have one more really impressive performance against another high-level team. And the injury element to it. Who knows what's going to happen with Auburn? Maybe it plays Florida, and Florida gets another win, and it gets it done easily, and Auburn gets booted from San Antonio by Saturday night. But if Auburn can manage to win that game and then win Monday night and win a national title, Broome coming back into the game, even though the game was well in hand, him coming back really will be one of the seminal moments of the season. This Auburn team has been impressive for the majority of the season. This was the most statistically dominant team in the country for the first 2+ months. It's gotten a lot of his mojo back, and all of that starts with that guy right there, Janai Broome.
Hi, Hakeem, you know what that was? Who am I?
The Heisman Trophy winner.
That Heisman moment.
Okay.
His Heisman moment.
That's college football.
That was his Heisman moment.
I think it's the John Wooden Award.
There. Yeah.
Well, it's the CBS Sports National Player of the Year.
Okay.
Yeah, there we go.
Heisman moment right there.
Hey, you know what? Here's a look at the tip times. Florida and Auburn, 2 SEC teams into the Final Four. We got a representative from the Big 12 champions, ACC champions, Duke, going in the late game. This is also the 5th Final Four game between teams from the same conference since 2000. Michigan State was in one against Wisconsin, and they ended up winning the national championship that year back in 2000. They're only one under Tom Izzo. Izzo at the podium.
Mike Griffith, Atlanta Journal-Constitution. Coach, you've dominated the SEC like few others. I think that's the first time you lost to an SEC team in the tournament, and I think you've won 7 out of the last 9 that you played them in the regular season. What would you say about that league and Bruce Pearl? You know, you ran into him when he was in Tennessee as well.
I mean, the league's been great all year. It's there's no question about it. I mean, they had the top teams. They competed every week against each other. You know, I think it's amazing that you know, they were pick 1 in the country, I think, early, and they survived most of the year, and they went through a little bit of a down out there, and part of it was Broome was hurt there for a little bit. I think they had one other kid out for a while. But, you know, we did most of the things we wanted to do except guard Broome a little bit better. You know, it wasn't the points he scored that got us. We're used to giving up points and making sure they don't get threes. A pretty good three-point shooting team. We held them to 28%. It was just, you know, he was 10 for 13. That's why he's an All-American. That's why he's a Player of the Year candidate. And, you know, did a hell of a job. But I thought that stretch early, you know, they went on a 17-0, and we just turned the ball over, you know. I mean, and it's been a problem for us a little bit. Not the turnovers. We had 9 for the game, which is phenomenal. Against a team like this, but it was in the spurts that we had them. And boy, that stretch we had at the beginning. At one time we had 4 or 5 offensive rebounds and kicked it out and had shot after shot after shot. they just didn't go in, and that happens. And so I'd say Bruce has done a great job because it's hard to keep a team, as I remember back to those days, from start to finish. The fans were great today. I mean, I don't think it affected us, and I say that because we've played in some of the greatest venues and been, but they were great. I mean, they were great, but I don't think that's why we lost. I think we lost because they played better than we did. They didn't shoot so well. 42, but that includes his 10 for 13. So the rest of the guys, we did a good enough job on. We just didn't score it enough ourselves, and we didn't. The turnovers were in critical times that led to layups.
Down front here on the right, first row.
Robbie Listella, bracketeer.org. Tom, I spoke with Jaden, Jace, and Cohen yesterday, and whether it was Jaden with his injury, Jace as a freshman, or Cohen getting his first start in the Sweet 16, they all said that your trust in them helped them gain confidence. What is it like been helping them grow in their game, and is that something you'd agree with?
Oh, yeah, it's the greatest. I mean, the greatest thing is players coming back, but the second greatest thing is watch people trying to reach the goals. I always tell them you got to dream it, and they dreamed it early. You got to work for it and have a goal, and they had the goal, and today they lived the reality of it, and they were, I mean, it wasn't like the game was that close that we felt like we could have won it. I think we felt like we should have won it because we didn't. Could have won it. I think we could have. And yet, you never know, man. You never know if you get another chance. And I think that's the hardest thing when you're talking to a team after, you just want to say, remember this moment so next year, because Cleve's taught me that, and some other guys, you start somewhere and you get to a Sweet 16. Next year was Final Four. Next year you won it. The problem is you got some guys that don't get that extra chance, so it's hard to say that in the locker room. It's a really unnerving thing, but all in all, I mean, God, it's going to be really hard to beat the connectivity and the camaraderie of this team. And we were young, I mean, we more or less started 2 freshmen, and our 2 guards were freshmen. So, we got some work to do yet, but I love the guys I got in that locker room.
We've got less than a minute, so let's take this question, and that'll be it.
Coach Jonathan Schaaf, Spartan Nation, Spartans on outside. You talked about this team coming a long way. What are some of the things your staff, the team did to really make that curve? Because not all of your teams you felt like you've been able to pull as much out of as this one.
Yeah, there's no question. This was probably the number one. But as far as pulling out what I thought when we left this building against Kansas back in November, I think it was. There were a lot of questions in a lot of people's minds, but some in mine. And I thought my staff did an incredible job. My trainers, we had no injuries all year. I think part of that was playing a lot of people and not wearing people down, but it's not easy to play a lot of people. It's not easy to accept it as a player, and it's not easy to do it as a coach. And I felt like, were reinvigorated me to realize there's still people out there that care about winning and care about getting better and care about playing for the school they're at and care about playing with the players they're with in this day and age when it's getting a little more selfish. That is rewarding. That is exciting. That is invigorating. I usually try to stick to 4-letter words and under, but I'm going way out of my line right now, and it was invigorating. And so who knows, who knows what the future brings, but I guess for the first time they got 4 1s in the Final Four. Is that true? Second time. When we went in Minnesota, my 3rd one, I think we had 3 1s and a 2, and so that means that the people that get all the criticism, besides the coaches and the media, the selection committee must have done a pretty damn good job. Give them credit. And I do think in watching, I watched some of that Houston game today, and ironically, I was hoping to get there. I took Kelvin Sampson's spot at Michigan State, as weird as that sounds as a GA. And so it would have been nice to get there with him. Judd would have been looking down, complaining to both of us that we don't play any zone. But I think of Rick Barnes and the job he did. There were so many people that did a good job. And guess what? Somebody's going to go home sad. Today it's the Spartans. Next Saturday will be, 2 more teams. And next Monday it'll be 1 more team. And I don't want to make it as trite as it sounds, because it's not. And if you've been in a locker room, there's some locker rooms that people are bitching and complaining. And then there's some locker rooms where people are crying and hugging. It was a crying and hugging locker room, and that means that we had something special. So I'm going to appreciate that. I'm sure it'll feel better in a couple days. And I give a lot of credit to Auburn. I think they're well coached. I think they did a good job. I think Broome is the real deal. Does things kind of effortlessly. And I thought those guards didn't play as well as they've been playing. If you want the truth, that we have something to do with it or not. But you know what? As they say, when your number one guy brings it, and he's been around a few years, they deserve to move on. So thank you very much. Atlanta was great. Appreciate you.
Thank you. It's why we love sports. It's the thrill of victory, the agony of defeat. Tom Izzo, a Hall of Fame coach. It's why we love the sport. The coaches are stars, the players becoming even bigger stars now with NIL. But Tom Izzo, 70 years old, doesn't sound like he's going to give anything up. Invigorating season. He loved this team specifically. A couple of players are going to move on for sure. He loses his first game to an SEC team in the NCAA tournament. But, man, one of the best to ever do it. Unfortunately, he's only got 1 title to show for it. But at the end of the day, he's got 1. And unfortunately, the drought continues for the Big Ten. They have not won a title since Michigan State cut down the net some 25 years ago. Still ahead, Janai Broome ending Michigan State's run as the Tigers' tale continues. On to San Antonio. On to full highlights as we relive the drama from Atlanta next on CBS Sports HQ. The final spot in the Final Four up for grabs. Both Auburn and Michigan State were in the Final Four together in 2019. Only one can advance here. Tom Izzo, a perfect 10-0 against SEC teams all time in the NCAA Tournament. Well, this game belonged to Janai Broome. Early first half, Broome in the post, spins, lays it up and in, up 12. Minute later, Broome drills the three, outscoring Michigan State by himself, 11-8. Caps a 17-0 run, started the run down 2, ended the run up 15. Spartans missed 10 straight field goal attempts. Just under 2 minutes left in the half. Todd Pettiford, the freshman, misses the floater. Broome on the putback, up 9 at the break. Broome in the first half, 17 points on 7 of 9, 11 rebounds, joined Zach Edey, only players with back-to-back first-half double-doubles in the NCAA tournament since 2015. Early second, Chad Baker-Mazara to Broome, up 11. Baker-Mazara to Broome, strong to the bucket, up 11. Broome up to 22 points, but then a concerning moment for the Naismith Player of the Year finalist. Mid-second, goes up to block the shot and lands awkwardly. Oh, hate to see that. Stays on the floor as play continues, holding his elbow after the play. On his way down, takes a bad fall. His mom emotional. That's my boy out there. He says, I'm done. He consults with his parents, goes to the locker room, but with just over 5 minutes left, x-rays on his elbow, came back negative, and Broome is back. Get out your seat. I'm good. Yeah, I'm good. Let me get in. Let me get in the game. So less than a minute after his return, off the missed 3 from Michigan State, Broome grabs the board with his left arm. Ensuing Auburn possession, Miles Kelly behind the back to Broome. Pure. Drills the 3. Tigers up 12. You can't script it any better. Shades of Willis Reed. Broome a game-high 25 points on 10 of 13. 14 rebounds as he shoots 77%. Broome and Auburn moving on to the Final Four, 70-64. The Tigers advancing to their second Final Four in school history. The other one in 2019. Now trying to cut down nets in San Antonio as Auburn completes the Final Four with all 4 1 seeds. Tracy Wolfson with Bruce Pearl and Janai Broome postgame.
Well, Coach, of course, calling the whole team over here, but congratulations. This team didn't let up once this whole entire game. What is it about this squad?
These guys love each other. They trust each other. And there's been so much responsibility on us being the #1 ranked team in the country. We've been a historic program in Michigan State, a team that gets to the Elite 8 and never loses, okay? We got this guy right here, number 4, best player in the country. He was absolutely the man on the inside. And it's about everybody. We all share. And how about the best fans in all of college basketball?
It was an incredible crowd having your whole back the whole time. But you talked about Janai. Let's talk about the Willis Reed moment. He goes down. I know there was a lot of concern, a lot of fear.
Yep.
What was that like when he walked back out onto the court and then hits that 3?
It was the Willis Reed moment. Flat out was the Willis Reed moment. But then he comes out there, he bangs the 3 ball, and the whole place went absolutely crazy. You know where we're going, Tracy?
You're going to the Final
Four. To the Final Four. Yeah!
Janai, you told me you came out here to dominate. That you did, but please take us through that injury to your elbow specifically. I know you hurt your ankle also, but it's certainly a scary moment for you.
For sure, it is a scary moment. I went down, but my team had my back. I went to the locker room, I still watched the game, and they kept it going, no drop off. I came back, do whatever it takes to help my team win.
Will you be ready to go next week?
I will be, but all glory to God.
You guys enjoy it. You're headed to San Antonio. How does that sound?
Better call him. Call God.
Broome's right. His team stepped up. Auburn tied Michigan State 7 for 7 over the 5 minutes with Broome on the bench. And look, that was an incredible story for Broome to come back in this game as he finishes with 25 points, 14 rebounds, 25 points on 10 of 13. That's good for 77%. That's also good for this. First player with 25 and 10 and a 75% or better field goal percentage in an elite game since Houston's Hakeem Olajuwon in 1984. My namesake, Hakeem. Oh, yeah. Coming up, our first look at the Final Four, and it's something we've only seen once in NCAA tournament history. All 4 1 seeds in the Final Four. This is CBS Sports HQ. This is chalk. Auburn, Florida, Duke, and Houston, all 4 1 seeds in the Final Four for just the second time in NCAA tournament history. The only other time was in 2008 in San Antonio. This year's Final Four in San Antonio. As you take a look at the schedule, the SEC matchup 6:09 Eastern time next Saturday, followed by Houston and Duke at 8:49 Eastern. Back here, Cavalcade of Stars, Matt Norlander, Gary Parrish, Tim Doyle with our first look at the Final Four. Matt, I'll go your way first here. Reaction to all 4 1 seeds making the Final Four, which we said was something that was possible.
Yeah, no, listen, this is big picture. This is a huge storyline. This is the kind of thing attached to a Final Four that will get even the most casual sports fans interested. We have had a tournament that has been void of Cinderella, But the best case scenario, if you're not going to have someone sticking around in the second weekend, is to have the best teams possible. We have not just all the 1 seeds, we have the top 4 teams at KenPom. We have not just the top 4 teams at KenPom, we have literally 4 of the 10 best teams in the history of KenPom involved in this Final Four. But there's a few more nuggets here to consider. How about Cooper Flagg, Janai Broome, and Florida's Walter Clayton Jr.? You know who those 3 are? They're the 3 best players in the country this season, okay? And I think it's them, and then you get into a debate about who should be 4 and 5 on our All-America ballots. You got 2 old guys, Bruce Pearl, Kelvin Sampson, against 2 young guys, John Shire and Todd Golden. We are guaranteed to have a coach win a national championship for the first time. I love getting to cover a Final Four when there's that part of it as well. There's a bunch of other stuff. Florida and Auburn met this season. They're going to have a rematch. Duke knocked Houston out of the tournament a year ago. Remember Jamal Shedd's injury, so we got that as well. So we have so many interesting stories and things to talk about with this. Cannot wait to get to Saturday, but I'll tell you what, I'll soak up the buildup as we move toward San Antonio over the next 5 days.
It's awesome. I love it. You know, Norlander and I, we do the Eye on College Basketball podcast 3 times a week during the regular season. We tend to talk about the biggest stories in the sport, and the biggest stories in the sport this year have largely been connected to the teams that are going to join us in San Antonio. I like a good Cinderella story as much as anybody else, but typically those end in blowouts. Those get lopsided. It becomes increasingly clear as a game unfolds that one of these teams was supposed to be here and the other one was fortunate just to get into this position. None of that with this Final Four. Everybody in San Antonio is awesome. Everybody in San Antonio is capable of winning the national championship. You don't say that about every Final Four, and I love the last point Norlander made. A week from Monday, we will watch somebody climb a ladder and cut down nets after winning a national championship for the first time in his college coaching career. And it could be an all-time great veteran on one side of it, or it could be a guy who got there way earlier in his career than most people thought was possible.
Well, we had the SEC get a record number of teams. They got 2 in the Final Four. I think a lot of people assumed that was right around the number a lot of people chose. I know that was the number I had. Auburn was double-digit favorite over Florida when they were at home, and it was all Florida in that game. They led by as many as 21 points. But is Florida on borrowed time? You know, life and death to beat UConn. Some would say lucky to beat Texas Tech. Texas Tech makes some free throws. You know, do they feel rejuvenated? Are we overlooking them? Like, I picked them before the tournament. I'm not feeling so hot about them. And then we get Cooper Flagg, and Duke has looked so dominant. 64% from the field they shot against Baylor. 60% against Arizona, over 50% against Alabama. Eyeball test when I watch the Dukies. Oh, it's like watching Secretariat in the Belmont. I think they're far and away the best team right now in college basketball.
First national semifinal is the all-SEC matchup, Auburn against Florida in February. The Gators beat the top-ranked Tigers, snapping Auburn's 14-game winning streak. Here we are, and now we're playing in April. Gary, how do these teams stack up at this point?
I think Florida has been playing better lately.
Florida, last couple of games, I mean, buddy, they should be gone.
Maybe, but they're not. And I think they're built for those moments, and they've got the guy who has established himself, and we could have had this conversation at any point. I don't know that I would have said this a month ago or 2 months ago or 3 months ago, but Walter Clayton has established himself as the best takeover guard in the sport. The history of this tournament has been written by takeover guards, guys who can just go out and win a game. Frankly, that's one of the things I think Tennessee ran into in the Elite Eight. They didn't have somebody who could just go get a bucket when everything else they were trying was difficult. Walter Clayton can go get tough shots. He can make tough shots. I think Florida, and reasonable people can disagree on this, has been the better team lately, but I'm going to stick with my original bracket, and I'll have Auburn getting past them.
Todd Golden was an assistant for Bruce Pearl at Auburn for 2 seasons from 2014 to 2016. They know each other well. Look, if I were going to change the mascot's name of Florida, it would be the Florida Bucket Getters. Like, they go out and get a bucket. I know that Tim has chronicled their struggles, but they can go get a bucket from any one of their guys.
They can, and we're going to both games here, but when you say that, I also think that all 4 of these teams, in their own way, have exhibited multiple times this season to have a tsunami-like effect on their opponents. I'll actually be interested to see if any of them can do that on a Final Four stage. Florida has pulled off insane runs to knock teams out of games. We've seen it from Auburn much more earlier in the season than the past month. We know what Duke can do. I was in Newark on Saturday. Duke played like a B-level game and beat Alabama by 20. That's insane. Alabama was one of the 10 best teams in the country easily this season, and they completely knocked them off their game. And then we know that, I mean, Houston puts you in a vice grip, and there's just no escaping it overall. It's not just Clayton, although he's the best one there. Alex Condon, who was able to come back after a little bit of an injury scare of his own, he's been good. But I will take Auburn in this game because I had it on Selection Sunday, albeit over St. John's. We'll see. It's going to be so intriguing to see how these teams scheme against each other. They are not similarly built, but the way that they can come at you and really take over games have very similar vibes overall. But give me Tigers over Gators.
Second national semifinal, Duke against Houston. Blue Devils beat the Cougars in the Sweet 16 last year by 3 points in a game that was played in the 50s. So maybe if it's played in the 50s this time, maybe Houston avenges that. Blue Devils riding a 15-game winning streak. Cougars on a 17-game winning streak, the two longest active streaks in D1. You got a 69-year-old head coach in Kelvin Sampson facing the 37-year-old John Shire. Shire with a chance to be the first person to win a national championship as a player and a coach at the same school. Matt, you wrote about this. Shire in just his 3rd year as a head coach. Sampson trying to win his first ever national title in his 36th year coaching in college.
Yeah, actually, as coincidence would actually have it here. So I did write about Shire Saturday night, deep into Sunday morning in Newark. And then Kelvin Sampson called me in February, and just one thing led to another, and we got to talking about how he even landed at Houston. And he was at Indiana. He got fired there, went to the NBA. He actually thought he would become an NBA coach, got a couple of job opportunities that he thought he was going to get a head coaching opportunity. That didn't happen, and he almost reluctantly went back into college. He spoke to his father on the phone, which wound up being the last time he ever talked to him, and he didn't know it at the time. His father would wind up dying a week later, and one of the last things Kelvin Sampson's father ever said to him was, "You're a college coach, fella. Don't you ever forget that." And he has gone to Houston, completely made it over. He's got an incredible story. And then the Shire stuff, real quick, guys. You know, he wanted the DePaul job. He's from Chicago. He thought he was going to get it. And then Shire had never revealed this publicly until we spoke after the game on Saturday night. He interviewed at UNLV and thought he was going to get the UNLV job and really wanted the UNLV job. He got turned down for both of them. What he did not know in that moment was that Mike Krzyzewski privately was getting ready to tell the people that were closest in that Duke program in the next 2 months that he was going to retire and they were going to figure out who the next head coach was. So Shire, in basically a 2-month time span, went from thinking, I'm going to be the coach at DePaul. No, wait, I'll be the coach at UNLV. Getting told no, getting the job at Duke. And how he has made Duke in his own image. Parrish and I will go deep on this all week on the podcast. I get for the cynics out there that say it's Duke, you know, how hard this can be. I'm telling you, you're replacing Mike Krzyzewski, arguably the greatest coach in the history of men's college basketball. There are many people that could have taken this job and not done nearly as well as Shire has done. 89 wins. If he wins one more game on Saturday, he will set the record for most wins in the first 3 seasons to start a career. I won't belabor the point. Please go read the story at CBSSports.com. John Cooper Flagg spoke one-on-one with me. Con Knipple, they had amazing things to say. And dare I say it, JP, Tim, has John Shire actually made Duke likable?
He's made them less hateable, and I gather that from just crowdsourcing social media. I've been saying this for a long time to the anti-Duke crowd out there. Like, if you ever got to know John Shire, like if you were lucky enough to just sit down and have a conversation with him, you would find him likable. He's incredibly sharp, intelligent, and Norlander's right. He has shaped this program in his own vision. He's not just running it the way Kay ran it. He's doing things differently. And it seems incredibly competent to run a brand of this size and this magnitude at a relatively young age. And I know some people might look at him and say, oh, how hard is it? You took over the Duke program. Yeah. Congratulations. Well, let me ask you, how hard is it to take over the Villanova program from Jay Wright? Well, the guy who did that's already got fired. Yeah. How hard is it to take over the North Carolina program from Roy Williams? Well, the guy who did that just barely snuck into the NCAA tournament and might enter next season on the hot seat. Yes, he got a great opportunity as his first head coaching career, but that doesn't mean he hasn't been great at it. And now, just you look at one team in this matchup, 17-game winning streak, the other one, 15-game winning streak, and with all due respect to all the conferences, these teams aren't coming out of Conference USA or the West Coast Conference. These are coming out of power conferences. I wonder, we'll get this at some point, have we ever had a Final Four matchup two teams coming in, combined 32 straight victories. Like, this is not normal. We're watching two of the best teams in the country, two of the best teams in recent memory play each other in a national semifinal, and I was not surprised to see that they announced tip times even before.
We knew the deal.
Once we had Duke, Cooper Flag, Houston, that was going to be the nightcap, no question about it.
Something you're going to hear, Kelvin Sampson had 73 wins as a head coach at Montana Tech before John Shire was born. John Shire can still shoot the basketball. I mean, he just hits buckets. Now, the problem is, Tim, can Duke get enough buckets to beat Houston? Because Houston is allowing 56.5 points per game this tournament, fewest by any team. Can they hold Duke in check, who's been really difficult to do so this far?
They have a lot going for them. They're going to have a big-time crowd there. They're going to be playing in a football arena, so tougher to shoot. You know, Duke has matched up against, let's just call it what it is, not great defensive teams. Alabama, Arizona, Baylor over the last 3 games. So they haven't seen a team like Houston before. They are going to make this a low-scoring game. I can't envision this being in the 80s, but, you know, when you see Duke, they got pros. When I look at Houston's roster, they have a really nice college team. To me, it's pretty stark difference, and it's not just Cooper Flag. When Proctor's getting going from 3, when Malawach is blocking shots, when Knipple is playing in the pick and roll. I mean, they have so many different guys, and a guy like James embraces his role.
Yeah.
Probably on 98% of college basketball teams in the country, he's getting 18 points a game. He's like, cool, I'll average 8 and guard the other team's best player. This team, in my eyes, is so much better. Like, if I had to rank the top 4 teams right now in the Final Four, it's Duke. 2 through 4 is like a toss-up.
Okay.
I think they're that much better than everybody.
To Tim's point, just to circle back to John Shire, you speak of Sion James, and he could score double digits at most places in the country, lead a lot of teams in scoring. They recruited him with this understanding. They talked to him about all of this. If you think you're going to come here and be our leading scorer, that's not right. You don't need to do that. Let's make sure you understand. You're going to come to Duke. You're going to put on this uniform. Yeah, we got NIL for you. Mostly you're going to be there to support the freshmen. We need roster balance. We need people like you. But we don't need people like you to take all the shots, score all the points. We need people like you to be a role player, an awesome role player on a national championship team. He's embraced that, accepted it, and this is the result.
Well, and he said in their win over Alabama, he said, yeah, we have Duke across our chest, but you got to go out and do the work. You got to go and grind when the games are being played. All of our picks made it to the Final Four. Houston for me and Matt. Tim picked Florida. Gary went with Auburn on Selection Sunday. Does anybody want to change their predictions right now at this point? We have one hand up.
No.
Tim.
Yeah, I think that eyeball test, Duke is by far the best team in the Final Four.
Okay.
So I picked Florida beforehand, and I've watched every single game. They're lucky to be in this situation. And I repeat, lucky. They had a 2% probability of beating Texas Tech. If Darion Williams makes some free throws, J.C. Toppin makes some free throws, that game is over. What concerns me about Florida in their matchup against Auburn, they couldn't stop Darion Williams. They couldn't stop J.T. Toppin. Now, if Broome's elbow is not right, who's going to stop him? So I think they're going to have their hands full at Auburn. And I just think Duke has by far the best players. They have 3 top 10 picks. They have 5 guys that I believe are going to be contributors on an NBA roster. You can't say that about any other team in the Final Four.
I have Auburn in my original bracket. I will stick with the Tigers just because what's the point in switching up now?
But if your paycheck was on the line, Gary, and they said no pay for the next 6 months unless you picked a winner, who are you picking?
I would pick Duke. History tells us that the NBA player thing typically matters. Last year, UConn had 4 NBA players in their starting lineup that got picked in the 2024 NBA draft. If Duke is holding the trophy at the end of this, the main reason will be because they've got 3 NBA players and the other teams can't match that.
I am sticking with Houston. They get the benefit of having this Final Four 3 hours from campus, home state, best defense in the sport. And oh, by the way, Kelvin Sampson has never had anything close to a team that is good from 3-point range as this group. Picked Houston on this desk on Selection Sunday. I'm sticking with it.
Are you being stubborn? When you were watching Duke live, did you say I made a mistake?
No.
I think you're being stubborn, Matthew.
Picking
Houston, the first team from the state of Texas to reach a Final Four held in Texas. It's a virtual home game, Alamo Dome, 3 hours away from the Cougars' campus. Houston could be the first team to win a national title in their home state since UCLA in 1975 when they won in San Diego. Houston, we have a national champion. Perhaps. Matt, Gary, what's coming up? This is one of the most listened, most watched podcasts of the year. What's coming up?
Well, we'll start by discussing the 4 #1 seeds. I'll make it to San Antonio, and then we'll break down both of Sunday's games, starting with the big win for Auburn. And then, of course, we'll wrap it up by slightly looking ahead to the Final Four. And then on CBS Sports Network, 1 o'clock Eastern tomorrow afternoon, we'll be back with another hour episode. Well, we'll play it even forward more.
Coming up, much more ahead from Atlanta. We've got a report as Auburn moves on to the Final Four. Bruce Pearl and the Tigers. The tale continues.
News all the time.
We've got breaking news to bring to you.
CBS Sports HQ gives you a snapshot of all the sports that matter to you.
Big news coming out of the NFL. A lot of movement in the rankings this week.
With highlights.
What a finish at the final round of play.
And in-depth analysis.
Can they three-peat? Tony Romo joins the conversation.
What can you say about this game?
When you need your sports in a snap.
We're bringing you that breaking news right here on HQ.
Find it on CBS Sports HQ. Streaming free anywhere you are.
The sports world never sleeps.
And neither do we.
Catch up with Brandon and Zach on the Morning Buzz Monday through Friday at 9 a.m. Eastern Time on CBS Sports HQ. The Morning Buzz brings you the latest storylines and highlights with expert analysis to get you dialed in. So grab your coffee and kickstart your day off right with the Morning Buzz only on CBS Sports HQ.
Shades of Willis Reed, Janai Broome gets injured in the Elite Eight. Comes back in the game, finishes with a game-high 25 points on 10 of 13, 14 rebounds as Auburn defeats Michigan State 70-64, advancing to their second Final Four in school history. The other one coming in 2019 now will face Florida on Saturday in the Final Four. Back out to the site in Atlanta. Welcome in 24/7 Sports national writer John Talty. John, you were there. You see Janai Broome get injured. What's the latest on him? You've been in the locker room. You've heard some new reporting here on what his status is.
Yeah, it's mostly vague to this point. Just left Auburn's locker room a couple minutes ago. He was getting his arm wrapped up with ice. When Janai was asked about it by me and other reporters, kind of going vague, saying, I wasn't quite sure, not really positive what the extent of it is. But even before he got hurt in the play that we all saw, I noticed him, come off the court earlier than that. I was getting looked at, looked like either his shoulder or arm. So could have been having some issues, I think, potentially even before the injury that we all saw, where it looked like both kind of a elbow and knee issue. Throughout the game, he was holding his right elbow. I saw him kind of courtside grabbing at it. So it seems like it could be potentially a lingering thing, but he went out for about 5 minutes. It looked like he might be out for the game, comes back from the locker room, and he goes up and tells assistant coach Stephen Pearl, like, I can come in if you need me. Seconds later, Dylan Cardwell wants to come out, and Broome goes right in. So I think we thought he might not play at all, end up coming in. He's clearly still hampered by it, so it's going to be worth watching to see how much it might impact him next week in San Antonio.
John, this Auburn team lost 3 of its 4 last games before the tournament. And we all know that there's no team that's ever lost 3 of their previous 4 before the tournament to win the national championship. What is different about the Tigers right now playing at this level?
Yeah, minutes ago, assistant coach Stephen Pearl was just talking about exactly that a lot of people panicked about this team. They thought because of the 3 losses that, it said something about them. But they were 2 good teams. They were close games. I think they internally were not that worried about it. And they knew that this team, has something special about it, whether it's a guy like Dylan Cardwell, who maybe doesn't fill up the stat sheet, but is so good, such a great defensive presence. He did so much tonight, stopping Michigan State and trying to drive the ball and get it in the lane. So they have all these different special pieces. Tahad Pettiford had a great game the night, 2 nights before against Michigan. They feel like they have a really strong core nucleus here. Of course, that starts with Janai Broome, but across the board, there's a lot of talent. We saw it against Michigan State tonight. They can go deep. They can rotate a bunch of different guys in. And that led them to have confidence that they were very battle-tested coming to this moment and allowed them to be ready and hold off all these little Michigan State spurts that we saw where it felt like the Spartans could never really get it closer than 5 points in the second half.
John Talty with the latest here on CBS Sports HQ, joining us from Atlanta as Auburn marches from Atlanta to San Antonio. John, thanks.
Appreciate it.
Janai Broome, the hero of this game, the story of this game. The first 2 games he struggled, and our Tim Doyle noted he didn't look right. He dealt with the shoulder injury in December, suffered the ankle injury, missed a couple of games in January, and didn't look right coming into the tournament. And the last 2 games, he's averaging 23.5. So he's looking very much like the National Player of the Year finalist that he is. Still ahead here on CBS Sports HQ, we'll hear from the head coach, Bruce Pearl, at the podium. We're going to the Final Four. They asked him when they lost 3 of their last 4, are you panicked? He goes, I'm not panicked. You kidding me? We're not panicked. We're going to the Final Four. New on CBS Sports HQ, Bruce Pearl and the Tigers at the podium. Let's listen in.
You know, Michigan State is a historic, amazing, great team. You know, Tom Izzo is a Hall of Fame coach. You know, he wasn't lying. You know, that's a great team we just played. And it had to motivate us a little bit. You know, obviously he knows the type of players he has. He knows how to motivate us. So, you know, shout out Michigan State again.
Third row on the left on the out.
Michael Giddens, War Report, Auburn. Janai, yesterday you told us after you scored 22 and 16, you felt like you didn't play well. What did you feel about your performance today?
I played all right.
That's it?
I mean, we won, so I'm happy we still dancing, man. All glory to God again for, you know, allowing me to be healthy.
Third row on the right.
Mike Griffith from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution for Tahad. How do you think playing in the SEC prepared you for what you've seen in the postseason so far?
Obviously, the SEC this year was like a gauntlet, so every night we had to be prepared. You know, it wasn't no easy game, so I just feel like coming into March, especially a tournament like this, playing every team you probably will, we were prepared for it because we played against everybody.
Far right on the fourth row.
Janai, Pat Forty from Sports Illustrated. I'm wondering, what did you do when you went to the locker room? How were you checked out? And what was your level of concern when you were back there?
I went to the locker room. You know, we have a great support staff. I checked my arm out. You know, the doc said, you know, nothing's wrong, you're good. You know, nothing serious. So at that moment, you know, I just want to help my teammates. And if that's coming back out and playing and, you know, hitting one shot and, you know, grabbing the rebound, man, I was going to do it. If that was just, you know, sitting on the sideline supporting, I was going to do it. So I came back out and, you know, Dylan needed a break. So I went in for a couple minutes just to help us win.
Two questions here on the left, fourth row.
Hi, good evening. William Bazone for WGXN News. This is a question for Tahad. Talk about that three that you hit in the second half with about 11 minutes to go on that little swing play, and the crowd went crazy. Just what was going through your head in that moment?
Definitely happy to see one go in, but just hearing the crowd and the energy, you know, go up after that shot, I feel like that just changed the momentum of the game and just helped us keep the lead that we needed.
First row on the far left.
Janai, Bill Troche, Sporting News. Can you describe the feeling when you were standing on top of the ladder?
Man,
I'm about to fall.
You know, words can't even describe it. You know, the fact that this team, you know, who's been working so hard from the time we got here to, you know, even the first time I talked to Coach, you know, this was a part of our plans, a part of our goals, you know, and still on top of the ladder in front of, you know, all the Auburn fans still being there, traveling, and, you know, witnessing it as well, and, you know, looking down and seeing my teammates, you know, the whole Auburn family, it just means the world to me to kind of be able to deliver for, you know, Auburn family.
Back row on the far right.
Jerry, I'm for the third AO.com. This question's for all the players. Florida gave you guys your first conference loss this season. How motivated are you guys for that rematch in the Final Four?
Cheney, why don't you take that one?
I mean, Florida has a great team.
yeah, it was good enough to beat us at home. So, I mean, we just got to go game by game. I mean, it's another team in a way of us getting to national championship. So, just got to continue putting our head down, continue staying humble, continue staying hungry, and just go out there and play with great effort and great energy.
One more for the student athletes on the third row on the left here.
Michael Giddens, Warport, Auburn. Cheney, your coach has described you as the hardest working guy on this team. In fact, there's a machine in the weight room. I think you own every record in it. Can you reflect on your work to this point and what it feels like to see all that hard work pay off?
It's the machine with you lift. It's like the robotic machine.
One in the back corner.
No. Well, fact check, Dylan did break my record. No. So he number 1 and I'm number 2 and I think I'm number 3. So
yeah, 4 and 5. I'm like 8 and it's like Dylan Cheney.
But take a break. I mean. This all good in my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. He's blessed me with such a wonderful opportunity. So I can't take it for granted. That's why I work so hard. I just want to be the best player I can for my team. So that's why I put in all the hours. And, I haven't been playing as well as I want to play. But, I'm blessed with another opportunity to play against a great team in San Antonio. So,
hopefully you show up.
It's got to, yeah. Like Todd said, hopefully I show up. But
nah, he going to show up. Believe it.
He has no choice.
Thank you, guys. You guys can go back to the locker room.
War Eagle.
Yes, War Eagle.
Oh, got me. Got you.
Just see it in Janai.
War Eagle. A good job. You're gonna take your tags.
Yeah, take your name cards.
Come on. Hello, what that shit right there, more man? Name up right now. They spelled your name wrong. I got your look.
Okay, let's start with Coach Pearl, far left on the 4th row.
Hi, Bruce. Good evening. William Bazone for WGXA News again. Just talk about in the second half. You had some guys in foul trouble, some injuries. I know you've been pretty, you've kept an 8-man rotation for most of that series. Was there any point where you felt like you wanted to go deeper in the bench or felt like you had to?
Well, I think that when Janai went out, I immediately thought about Cheney and Dylan, and neither one of them were in foul trouble. And so I knew that we were going to be fine there. I might have to use some timeouts to be able to just give them the rest that they needed. And if Janai had probably not come back out of the locker room, I probably would have gotten a timeout. It was not going to affect us defensively. Cheney and Dylan can obviously do what needs to be done on the defensive end and rebounding. And my guess is when Janai was out, we hung in there because we probably made it difficult for Michigan State to score.
Pat on the far right.
Yeah, he did. Your team matched Michigan State 7 for 7 when he was out. So that also tells the story. Your team is deep. Bruce Pearl knows it. And there it is. 4 teams standing. Does your bracket look like that? Mine doesn't anymore. There's a couple of people in this location here in Stamford, Connecticut that have a bracket that looks like that. Still in the mix. All 4 1 seeds for just the second time in NCAA tournament history. You're going to hear it a whole lot this week because it's pretty awesome. It's only happened once. 2008, it was in San Antonio. Final 4 in San Antonio.